Today we'll be talking about spiritual bypassing and presence. But first, let's talk about spiritual bypassing and what that means. In the non-dual tradition, spiritual tradition, we have the idea that all of our distress comes from identifying as a separated ego self from that oneness, that divine oneness. And so sometimes when we experience something distressing in the world, whether it be a one-on-one situation where somebody seems to upset us by what they say or do, instead of dealing or going through a process with that issue, looking at what actually it was triggering, maybe some self-concepts that we need to resolve, past issues that have come up for resolution, being represented in the present situation. Instead of dealing with that kind of thing, we can go, I'm not a body, I am free, I am still as God created me. That's one of the course's lessons, a line from that I just took. So we can think of the non-dual reality as a way of bypassing, or that's called spiritual bypassing the pain associated with actually looking at and working through an issue that has been presented for us in the now. And we know that it's been presented for us in the now because we've been triggered. We've had an emotional response to something that has gone on in our world. So although we might feel temporarily relieved by thinking of, I'm oneness, the world is an illusion, or any of those kind of thoughts, it's really, we haven't resolved anything. And there's this saying, what you resist persists. If you resist looking at something, that's a good sign that you need to look. So sometimes we can say, there goes my ego, getting upset by something out there. It's just my ego making trouble. I'm afraid of peace. But sometimes we do need to look at what is being presented to us. And if we feel resistant to looking at it, or if we don't want to look at it, that's kind of a good sign that we need to look at it. But to me, the idea of spiritual bypassing can also relate a little bit to the idea of presence. In the mindfulness tradition, there's the idea that if you are present to your breathing, to who you are as an infinite being, if you are present to yourself in the moment, then the distressing things that are happening out there won't affect you so much, and you'll be able to respond without anger or fear to what's going on around you. And there is a lot to that. I think tuning in, being mindful of the fact that you have lost your peace and now can bring back your mind to that sense of presence is very helpful. But the Course in Miracles is different to that idea of simply bringing your mind back to presence. And here I'd like to emphasize the Course's process of forgiveness and what it says about hearing the Holy Spirit. So I've likened the idea of presence, of tuning in to the stillness, the quietness, I've likened that to, we could say, tuning into the Holy Spirit. So tuning into the Holy Spirit's peace and letting that help us deal with what's in front of us. Very valuable thing, again. However, the Course's path is different to a focus on that. And to explain this a bit further, I'll read from some passages in the Course that talk about why forgiveness, which is a process that involves your perceptions of others, why that is a very healing thing and necessary in the path towards getting to that sense of stillness and peace. So here are some passages from A Course in Miracles. I'm reading from a section in the Course's text called The Guide to Salvation, and it's talking about the Holy Spirit and why we need our brother and to work with our perceptions of our brother to tune in to the Holy Spirit. The idea of the Holy Spirit shares the property of other ideas because it follows the laws of the universe of which it is a part. It is strengthened by being given away. It increases in you as you give it to your brother. Your brother does not have to be aware of the Holy Spirit in himself or in you for this miracle to occur. He may have dissociated the call for God, just as you have. So dissociated in this instance is meaning he may have split off. Yes, he may have dissociated the call for God, just as you have. This dissociation is healed in both of you as you become aware of the call for God in him, and thus acknowledge its being. See him through the Holy Spirit in his mind, and you will acknowledge him, the Holy Spirit, in yours. What you acknowledge in your brother, you are acknowledging in yourself, and what you share, you strengthen. So this speaks to the course's idea that ideas are strengthened through sharing them with people. Now, it doesn't mean sharing verbally, but within your mind, you acknowledge the Holy Spirit in the other person, and by doing that, you acknowledge it within yourself. So there's a kind of an order of things. You acknowledge in somebody else what you will then acknowledge in yourself. But this goes on, and this is the really important paragraph for these purposes. The voice of the Holy Spirit is weak in you. So just trying to tune into the presence, say, of the Holy Spirit, of yourself, just trying to tune in is going to be difficult, because the Course is saying that the voice of the Holy Spirit is weak in us, in our initial trainings anyway. So, the voice of the Holy Spirit is weak in you. That is why you must share it. It must be increased in strength before you can hear it. It is impossible to hear it in yourself while it is so weak in your mind. It is not weak in itself, but it is limited by your unwillingness to hear it. Okay, so that's pretty clear. We are conflicted about whether we want to hear the Holy Spirit or not. That's because we're still attached to our ego. So even though we might think, I'm going to tune into the Holy Spirit, to the stillness, to the presence, there will be a part of us, our ego, that doesn't really want us to do that. So the tuning in, and I'll talk about this a little later, the tuning in that we think we're accomplishing is really another form of dissociation, but I'll speak of that a little further down. Now this is the kicker line. If you make the mistake of looking for the Holy Spirit in yourself alone, your thoughts will frighten you, because by adopting the ego's viewpoint, you are undertaking an ego alien journey with the ego as guide. This is bound to produce fear. So what the Course is saying here is if that you try to look for that presence, the Holy Spirit, that stillness in yourself alone when you're in an encounter with people, or anytime really, you will become scared. You might not realize that you're in a state of fear, but again, I'll explain later what that state might be like. But what you're doing is, because you're self-centered in that process, and by self-centered I don't mean the capital S self, you're looking for something that is ultimately a part of everybody. So presence, the Holy Spirit, is a part of everybody's mind as part of that one sonship, but you're looking for it in yourself alone. Therefore, that is what it means by you have adopted the ego's viewpoint. You're looking for something in yourself that alone, that actually exists within everybody. So that's why it's the ego's viewpoint. You are undertaking an ego alien journey with the ego as guide. So with that ego's viewpoint, which is looking for something that is ultimately part of everybody within myself alone, you're looking at it with the ego as a guide to something it doesn't understand. So you're actually engaging your ego to help you find the Holy Spirit or presence. The ego has no idea what either of those things are. And so what happens when you have a guide, let's say you put your trust in a guide to take you to safety, but then you find out the ego that guide has no idea where it is, has actually no idea what safety is either, has no idea of what you're looking for and how to get it, you're going to get a bit scared. So the Course is saying that if you look for the Holy Spirit within yourself alone, you'll end up actually in a state of fear. So passages like these emphasize the relationship, the relational nature of A Course in Miracles and its path of healing. And now I'm going to read a few more short passages from the Course just to emphasize this idea that we're never healed alone, and we don't look for healing of ourselves alone. Otherwise, we're kind of working against ourselves. Anyway, here are some of those passages. So this is from a chapter called The Journey Back. It's chapter 8, and a section called, a section called The Holy Encounter. Paragraph 5. The goal of the curriculum, regardless of the teacher you choose, is know thyself. There is nothing else to seek. Everyone is looking for himself and for the power and glory he thinks he has lost. Whenever you are with anyone, you have another opportunity to find them. Your power and glory are in him because they are yours. The ego tries to find them in yourself alone because it does not know where to look. The Holy Spirit teaches you that if you look only at yourself, you cannot find yourself because that is not what you are. So the idea is that with the original mythological creation myth of the Course, where a part of God's sonship believed it had separated from God, that part then fragmented into many, many gazillions of separated sons. And we are all those supposed separated sons. And so each of us is part of that one son that had the original thought, the original error. So we are all part of each other in mind. And so that is why we're never healed alone. And when we don't offer a healing, not only are we withholding the healing from ourselves, we're also withholding it from somebody else, and vice versa. So carrying on. Never forget your responsibility to him, because it is your responsibility to yourself. Give him his place in the kingdom, and you will have yours. And a little further. The kingdom cannot be found alone, and you who are the kingdom cannot find yourself alone. So along with this idea that we're never healed alone, that we cannot find the Holy Spirit within ourselves alone, is the idea of sharing. Sharing is a big emphasis in A Course in Miracles. Ideas are shared to be strengthened. Healing is shared. The arc of peace is entered 2 by 2. The only thing that is truly valuable in the world is what can be shared with everybody. And this is another part of the Course where it emphasizes that idea of sharing. It's in the Holy Spirit's Plan for Forgiveness in chapter 9, paragraph 3. The atonement is a lesson in sharing, which is given you because you have forgotten how to do it. That's italicized. We have forgotten how to share. The Holy Spirit merely reminds you of the natural use of your abilities. By reinterpreting the ability to attack into the ability to share, he translates what you have made into what God created. So when we want something for ourselves, it is a form of distancing ourselves from other people, and in that way it is an attack. Sharing is the opposite of an attack. Sharing is acknowledging what is within me is within you, and what is shared with everybody is truly valuable. The ego is never interested in sharing. It's like, I'll enter into my own private reverie without any regard to you, and we'll get into what that feels like. I keep saying that, but we're nearly there. Okay, so the last Course quote for now on this idea of not being healed alone. You cannot perform a miracle for yourself. because miracles are a way of giving acceptance and receiving it. In time, the giving comes first, though they are simultaneous in eternity, where they cannot be separated. So there we go. The whole idea of the Course's path to peace and to feeling presence is to acknowledge what is in the other person, acknowledge the Holy Spirit in their mind, acknowledging the one need in their mind to know of who they are. And by doing that, you're acknowledging those things within yourself. You're remembering the Holy Spirit for that person in themselves, and thereby remembering it for yourself. You're reinforcing the idea of the Holy Spirit within your mind by acknowledging that the Holy Spirit is within their mind as well. So now to a bit of an explanation as to what it might feel like to try and connect with the Holy Spirit without an appreciation for the Holy Spirit within the other person's mind, for the same need for healing in the other person. So when you feel distressed, say at what somebody else says, you think, I need to remember who I am. But they need to remember who they are as well. And so it's not just about offering peace to yourself, it's about being willing to offer peace to the other person. And in that willingness, you're also accepting that you are the same. You share the same need, you share the same call for help, and you ultimately share the same spiritual self. If you're willing to join with that person, then you will connect with the Holy Spirit. So I've drawn 3 different scenarios here on the whiteboard, illustrating what it might be like to be in a situation where you don't look to your right mind at all to help you out, and you're right there in the thick of the battleground. Well, that's what's happening in this first diagram. We've got the Holy Spirit, we've got I and other. So while you're in conflict, and I've drawn a strong red line here to illustrate conflict. While you're in the midst of the conflict, you're in the battleground, you've dissociated from the Holy Spirit. There is no line whatsoever connecting you to the Holy Spirit or the other person to the Holy Spirit. And this battleground involves a lot of projection and anger. So projection of responsibility for how you feel. You're upset, you're blaming the other person for it. How dare they? Now in this diagram, you have the same thing, the I and the other. So you're accusing this person of doing something that's upset you. But in this situation, you try and detach from your uncomfortable feelings, from the anger you have by them towards this other person, and you try and connect straight to presence or the Holy Spirit. And you're focusing on that presence, Holy Spirit, exerting a lot of mind power to try and connect with that stillness. I've drawn a dotted line here because that connection, as we've seen, because of the ego in us, is resistant to connecting to the Holy Spirit. As a dotted line, it's not strong. And I've also drawn a connection here with other in the dotted red line, which shows that it's still to do with a battle, a perception of separate interests, that one is being attacked by the other, that one is a victim, one is a victimizer in the scheme of things. And I've also drawn the I in as a separated line. It's fragmented. So in this situation, when we're really going at it hammer and tongs with someone in the battleground, we can have a strong sense of I, and it can be self-righteous, it can be fearful, but whatever it is, it's I. When we start to try and dissociate really from the problem in front of us and go straight to the Holy Spirit, we're not getting a strong connection, although we can kid ourselves that we are. We're not getting a strong connection there. We've still got the repressed connection here. There's still the problem that we've kind of tried to dissociate here, but it's dotted. We're still connected to it. What you resist persists. And so also that sense of I, in contrast to this one, it can become a bit nebulous, a bit wafty. It's like we're withdrawing from the situation. We're not 100% there. We feel this separation between ourselves and the environment. And we can become quite emotionally attached and appear emotionally attached or feel numbed to what's going on around us. And again, we can kid ourselves that we're just so removed from it, so emotionally detached because we've risen above what's going on around us. But actually what we've done is we've kind of dissociated a bit. We think that we're very present to what is going on, but we've actually emotionally kind of detached from it. We can say what's going on, but we have withdrawn emotionally. And I think that would be evident to others as well. There's just this, they look a bit weird, or they're not engaging, with the conversation, or why are they so still? You can be still in your mind, but not necessarily still in your body and your mannerisms. Okay, so I call that bypassing. So you've gone straight to the Holy Spirit or to presence, but you've actually trying to dissociate from what's going on around you. So you're losing a connection with what's going on around you, and you're becoming emotionally detached, but you're mistaking that for peace. Now, lesson 74 in the course's workbook has some really good lines that help us know that we're not in presence, we're not in touch with the Holy Spirit, we're actually withdrawn from whatever was disturbing us. And it says that joy characterizes peace. So that is a way that you can tell the difference between whether you have withdrawn from what's going on around you or whether you have actually connected with the Holy Spirit and the Holy Spirit in somebody else. You will experience joy, not withdrawal, not be emotionally detached. You will experience a sense of joy, a sense of happiness. Now in this last diagram, I've changed other to brother. It's a bit cute, I know, but anyway, so as we connect with the Holy Spirit in ourselves and remembering it in our brother as well, then we connect with the sense of our whole spiritual self. And that sense of wholeness is very different to this sense of I, this sense of I know who I am, I'm right. This sense is peaceful, is joyful. And not only do you know who you are, you know who your brother is as well, in terms of them being more than their body, more than their behavior. It's like you know the solution to their actions if they were unkind or if they're fearful or if they're just annoying. You know the answer to all those actions is the atonement principle, is that they never separated from God, because nobody ever separated from God. You just have an acceptance that everything is okay. You're okay, they're okay, everything is okay. So this trinity of forgiveness, I've called it, is expressed nicely in this little paragraph from the end of the psychotherapy pamphlet. This is a very, very old edition. Remember the sorrowful story of the world and the glad tidings of salvation. Remember the plan of God for the restoration of joy and peace. This is the plan. And do not forget how very simple are the ways of God. You were lost in the darkness of the world until you asked for light, and then God sent his Son to give it to you. So whenever we feel lost, we have each other to help remind us of who we are, of our source, of our eternal comfort. This is really well expressed in this book, Ransom. It's a novel by an Australian author called David Malouf, and it's a wonderful story looking at an event that was discussed in the Iliad by Homer, centering around the war against Troy. There's an interaction between Achilles, who's working with the Greek army, fighting with the Greek army against Troy, and there's an encounter between him and the King of Troy, which is very healing. And it's that encounter that speaks to Achilles' yearning. At the beginning of the book, we find Achilles sitting by the beach, and the water is, for him, the ocean is a symbol of mother. And the way Malouf writes about the ocean and Achilles seeing it as a symbol of mother, it really evokes what you might call oneness, yearning for our source. And what you find is that that yearning for that connection to his source actually becomes answered through a big forgiveness situation between him and King Priam of Troy. Now, if you're interested in reading that, I have written an essay called Guides, Gurus and Grace, and it's on my blog. I will post a link to it in the description of this video. And I think David Malouf here has written a beautiful fictional account of that historical episode that really emphasizes how forgiveness and this kind of trinity of forgiveness leads us so powerfully to an experience of presence and to hearing the Holy Spirit and to answering that deep inner need, that yearning for peace associated with our home. If you've got any questions, please pop them in the comments below, and I'll speak to you again. Thank you. Bye.